Welcome to Attack Your Day Before It Attacks You with Mark Woods. Mark has been talking about time, productivity, goals, and work life integration for over 20 years. He's the author of Attack Your Day Before It Attacks You that was first published in 2010. I discovered his book shortly after it was published, and his methods have helped me and every team I have led since be infinitely more productive with way less stress. When he's not talking about time or giving a lecture, he's consulting with leaders and organizations on productivity, workflow management, strategy, and business development. I am so excited to have Mark here with us today because we are inundated with tools and resources that they say will save us time, improve our productivity, and even balance our lives. And yet most doctoral students and faculty seem to find themselves in a constant cycle of overwhelm, stress, and frustration, just feeling like there are not enough hours in every day. Well, tonight you're going to learn that the solution is not better time management, it's activity management. Mark, welcome.
Thank you so much for that introduction. Wow, you do a great job, Heather. And welcome, everybody. Thanks for spending the next 30 to 40 minutes with us. I know that your time is very valuable and that you chose to be here with us. So hopefully you're going to walk away with some fantastic tips that are going to help you to get more out of your day. So, it was probably one of the most amazing nights that my father ever had. He was invited to have dinner with a friend of his who just returned from the moon. His name was Jim Irwin. Jim was one of the Apollo 15 astronauts in one of the last lunar missions. So there they were at the dinner table where he could ask anything he wanted about that trip to the moon. He did ask questions, lots of questions. But at some point he said, Jim, if you had to boil it down to one thing, if you had to pick one thing, what do you think was the single most compelling thing that you experienced while you were up there on the moon? What do you think it was? Well, after a brief pause, Jim began to get a big grin on his face and he says, well, I'll tell you what one thing was. It was to orbit the moon and watch the Earth rise. To see this tiny planet of ours come up as a blue and white marble, so small, in fact, that I could reach my thumb out and cover it with my thumbnail. Well, there is something about that that is quite compelling. Then he followed up with these words. He said, if you want to get life's problems, life's challenges, life's frustrations in their proper perspective, why don't you give that one a try? Orbit the moon and watch the Earth rise. There's something about it that just shrinks life's problems down to size. Wow. My dad learned a principle that night that he went on to apply throughout the rest of his life. He called it the principle of perspective. You see, I believe that you and I can be so close to a situation, a condition, a challenge, even an opportunity that sometimes we just don't see what's there because we're too close to it. In Irwin's case, it was the planet. He lived here. But when he's able to leave the Earth and view it from a totally, totally different perspective, it changed his entire life. Now, I don't intend to change your life in the next 20 to 30 minutes, but what I do hope to do is share with you a new perspective on time, to get you to begin to think about your time in ways that you haven't considered before. And then we're going to move into 5 skills that will help you to get the most out of your time every day. These are things that you can apply immediately, and they're super easy to do. So let's jump right into it. You already know what the problem is. Today, we have more events and more activities to manage than ever before because of technology, the internet, and the expectations of doing more with less in both our work and our personal life. In a way, we've become compressors of life, trying to jam as many activities and experiences into our day as we possibly can. And it's okay once in a while when we overplan and overcommit and try to do everything. But when we do this on a continuous basis, it drives our stress levels up. We feel a greater sense of anxiety inside. We get nervous. We experience most often overwhelm. And eventually, if we don't fix this problem, we reach burnout and sometimes even shutdown. And it's no secret that the self improvement or the self care industry has exploded over the last 7 years. You see these meditation apps that have been taking over everything because people are looking for something to help them get back to reality and control time. So it's really not that difficult. First of all, I do want to share this with you. There's no panacea. Panacea is a cure all. And that's what a lot of us do. We're looking for the best next application that's going to help us to solve our life's problems. But it begins up here in your mind. You have to first change your mindset, how you view certain things, and then find tools that work for you that enhance what you've done up here. So I want you to begin to think about that when we get through these techniques that we're going to share with you tonight. So if you want to gain control of your time, it simply begins by recognizing and understanding that we don't manage time, we execute activities. So let's start there. We like to say that activities rule the day. So if you were to think about it, what is an activity? Well, in its basic form, an activity is anything that we do. It's eating, sleeping, breathing, brushing our teeth. It's taking a walk. It's walking our dog. It's driving. It's creating a TikTok video. It's sending a text message to a friend or a colleague. It's writing an email. It's standing still, looking up at the sky and watching a flock of birds fly, or watching a jet liner with the exhaust create a pattern. So yes, it's even doing nothing. From the moment you took your first breath in life, you've been executing activities on a nonstop basis. If we examine activities further, we realize that they can be physical in nature, running, walking. They can be mental, which is reading or thinking. Some activities are long in duration. Some activities are short in duration. Now, some activities of long duration can have very little consequences. Now, some activities of short duration can have huge consequences. But the most important thing to recognize about activities is that they're never neutral. And I'm going to repeat that because if you get one thing out of tonight's webinar, it's that. The important thing to recognize is that the activities we choose are never neutral. They either enhance the quality of our life or they detract from the quality of our life, for better or for worse. The following statements are going to help illustrate this point. Activities that align with what we value will give us a greater sense of satisfaction than those that don't. Again, activities that align with what we value give us a greater sense of satisfaction than those that don't. Activities creatively arranged in a sequence can culminate in the achievement of a desired outcome or a goal. For me, it might be training for a triathlon or a marathon. There are certain things that I have to do to train in order to do that. For you, it's completing your degree. There's certain things that you have to do in a sequence in order to achieve that. Now, negative activities repeated over and over again can erode our well-being. What would be a good example of that? Maybe social media. I like to say that sometimes it's not those activities like Netflix or social media that are bad for us. My example, I guess, would be ice cream, because I love ice cream and I eat a lot of it. But when we do it too often or too much, that's when it begins to erode our well-being. Positive activities repeated over and over again can make us stronger and improve our well-being. Activities repeated over and over again become habits. And as you all know, some habits are good for us and some habits are bad for us. When we choose to do certain activities, we simultaneously exclude other activities. So, like we said at the very beginning, activities are never neutral. So, when we choose to do certain activities, we're excluding other activities. So, it's about choice. It's a matter of choice. And that is going to be the first of 5 quick skills that we're going to run through here tonight. The first one is to choose. I like to say choosing and refusing the activities we do have a direct impact on the quality of our life, also our performance and our productivity in both our work and our personal lives. Now, the key part of choosing activities is refusing activities. Good choosers are good refusers. They simply know how to say no, and they have a strong no muscle. In fact, one of the first steps to overwhelm is the inability to say no to activities that distract from value added activities. Put another way, overcoming overwhelm is about saying no. Now, most people think that saying no only involves saying no to other people. But the most important thing, the real gist of it, is to learn to say no to yourself. A lot of it has to do with our smartphones and social media and the apps that we use. It's answering a text message when we hear a ding or alert that goes off. These temptations, we say yes to these temptations often too fast, and the activities may be fun at first, but they detract from what we were currently doing. In fact, excuse me, I like to say that sometimes we even welcome interruptions simply as an excuse for procrastinating on activities that we know we really should do or want to do. So, to help us deal with interruptions and distractions, we are going to use the metaphorical traffic light. This is the universal code. Everybody around the world, regardless of language or where they live, at some point has probably come across a traffic light and know what red, green, and yellow stands for. So, like automobile traffic, our daily activity traffic can be controlled by this metaphorical traffic light. So, the next time you get interrupted, I want you to catch yourself. The next time you get distracted, I want you to catch yourself. I want you to stop. I want you to take a breath. And then I want you to ask yourself this filter question. What color is this? Then take one of the following actions. You've probably guessed it. Red means stop. Don't do it. Refocus on what you were doing at that time. Green means go. You want to do green activities because these are the activities that add value or enhance the quality of our life. So again, when we interrupt ourselves, we ask ourselves the filter question. If it's something that we shouldn't be doing at that time, we're going to color it red. We're going to stop and go back to what it was we were doing. If it's a green activity and we know that it's going to add value to us at this moment, we're going to do it because it's green. Now, the last color is the color yellow. Yellow is a little bit more tricky. We still use the color yellow, just like if we're driving down the street and encounter it at a traffic signal, to stand for use caution. So in this case, you're going to think about it. A yellow activity is kind of neutral. It could carry some value, but maybe not necessarily at this moment. So reschedule it, maybe do it some other time. Maybe it's a video that somebody sent you and say, hey, you got to watch this. Yeah, you're going to watch it, but not right this minute. You're going to do it at a later time. So that's how we use the colors to identify interruptions and distractions. Try it tomorrow. Try it tonight. I promise you, when you start doing this and make it a habit, it becomes automatic. Pretty soon you'll be doing it automatically, and it's going to save you a ton of time and decrease your stress. The next skill is tracking your time to know where it goes. Many of us don't have really any idea at the end of the day where our time goes. You've heard the old saying, the hurrier I go, the behinder I get. People are trying to get through so many activities so fast, but they end up slipping further and further behind. The problem is that people rush into their day without any plan at all. And when we do that, we end up working on other people's time. We work in reactive instead of a proactive mode. So if you're going to gain control of your time, you have to start thinking about investing a little bit of time upfront to plan and arrange your day. So it's taking time in advance to plan and arrange your day. Before we move into that, I want to maybe share a challenge with you. If when I talked about the skill of tracking, and you think that maybe you don't really know where your time goes, maybe it would be a good idea for you to track your time tomorrow or maybe for the next 3 or 4 days. And it would be as simple as taking out a piece of paper and identifying when you're doing certain activities, how long it's taken, and then code it with red, green, or yellow so that you know what type of activity it was. Was it something that maybe you shouldn't have done? Was it a green activity? It's added value, or maybe it's a yellow. You could have taken it or leave it. So track your time and see where it goes. It's a real eye-opening experience. The next skill is the skill of arranging. It's taking time in advance to arrange your day. So the question now becomes, what's on your plate today? When we look at our day like that, where every one of those black dots signifies an event or an activity that we must do today, I don't know about you, but I get intimidated just looking at that, and my stress starts going up because everything is staring at me with the same color. But when you decide to color your choices and look at them in a different light, your day begins to look like this or like this. So the first thing you want to do is identify what are the activities that I must execute today that are green, and focus on creating your activity list and deciding which green activities you're going to do today. Yellow activities, if they're on your activity list, would represent something that you have to do at some point in the future, but not necessarily today or tomorrow, or maybe even at all. You probably have a master list of things that you've been tracking and writing down that you want to do. My wife, she has lots of lists and they keep growing and growing and growing. And at some point she said, some of these things I just don't even need to do anymore because it's been so long. Maybe you have experienced something similar. So yellow activities carry some value. They need to be done at some point in the future, but not necessarily today or tomorrow, but maybe sometime this week. Now, reds carry a double meaning. Earlier, we talked about using these colors to stop you from doing activities that may be a distraction. And we use the color red to stop ourselves from engaging. But if we're building an activity list and it's about things that we have to accomplish at some point in the future, we could use the color red to heighten our way of identifying something that has to be done today. So you could use the color to identify activities that have to be accomplished as soon as possible or by the end of the day. So think about coloring your choices as you make your activity list. So the next part of arranging involves planning. It requires a little bit of planning. And if you're going to invest time in the planning process, I suggest that you really do it. You can't just think about what you're going to do in your head and not document it at some point. You can't do it while you're driving. You really need to decide to go to a place of solitude, free of interruptions and distraction, where you can sit, think, and plan what you need to accomplish today. So we suggest that you should give it at least 5, 10, 15 minutes. And if you're going to invest time in the planning process, you'll want to be sure to avoid the three deadly planning mistakes. The first one is we often attempt too much. We put so much stuff on our plate that sometimes we might only get one, two, or three things done of all the things that we set out to accomplish. And this happens a lot. So the first thing is be aware of how much time things will actually take. It goes back to the skill of tracking, which was the second skill we talked about. You need to identify how long it takes for you to perform certain activities. The other thing when it comes to time and activities is that people fail to count transition time. Transition time is the amount of time that it takes for you to prepare to execute the activity. And then there's time at the end, which is your transition time from going from one activity to the other. How much time does it actually take you to do that when you're executing a specific type of task or an activity? So tracking is important and making sure that you don't attempt too much. The second deadly planning mistake is that people don't allow time for interruptions. And they come in two forms: self-imposed interruptions and outside interruptions from other people. So you need to reserve a little bit of time in your day to account for those interruptions and distractions that come your way, to either take care of them if they're important and urgent, or to reschedule them and do them later. And the last one is people rush the planning process. They just give it a lick of a promise, my dad used to say, and that just doesn't work. I know that you're busy and you have so much to do, but if you commit to planning a little bit up front, you're going to get a lot more time throughout your day. In fact, my dad used to teach time management for 25 years before he passed a long time ago. And he always would say that there's an old axiom in this business that for every minute I invest planning, I'm going to gain 3 minutes back in execution. And I believe it. I know myself that when I truly invest the time where I plan it and focus, I get back that in execution. All right, we got two more in 6 minutes. We can do it. The fourth skill that I want to talk about is the skill of Flexecute. I know you probably haven't heard it before, but it's a word that my dad came up with about 15 years ago. And it's simply flexibly executing activities throughout your day. Flexibly executing activities throughout the day. I'm a realist, and I know probably the first thing that went through your mind was, Mark, sometimes I plan my day, but by 9 a.m., I have something come up and I get totally pulled off my list. And it doesn't matter whether I plan or not, because I end up having to do other things that people need me to do. And I totally get it. I understand it, but it's not a good attitude to have towards the planning process. So, what planning does is even if you get pulled into another direction, it's going to help you to get back on course. I mean, let's face it, on a typical day, you can expect to get caught in the crossfires of interruptions, and the unexpected is going to bubble up. Demands are going to fall from the sky at the most inconvenient times. So that's when it's time to flexecute. So just because we don't have a lot of time, I'm just going to make three statements about flexecute. The first one is flexecuting involves the ability to leave your activity list when priorities shift. So you might have that perfect plan for today, but if a priority pulls you off that plan, you might have to shift direction for a little while. Just do it and don't let it throw you. The next one is to be able to turn on a dime in the middle of the day when opportunities present themselves. Sometimes an opportunity might come up for us to do something spectacular, either personally or, in your school life or at work. I'm the worst at it. I have a real hard time being spontaneous. My wife is the total opposite. I mean, she'll drop on at the moment and go do something crazy. In fact, we had a huge snowstorm 3 weeks ago. You probably heard about it on the East Coast, and Pittsburgh was kind of like right in that chain. And we had so much snow. And at 10 o'clock at night, she said, "Get your jacket on, get this headlamp on. We're going sledding." So I went for it. because I'm tired of her making fun of me for not doing it. And we went sledding in the middle of the night, pitch black with nothing more than a headlamp. And it was super fun, an experience that I'll remember forever. So think about things that you can do. And if you normally would say no, if it's going to be a green activity, let it enhance the quality of your life then and do it. The last tip is don't be a multitasker. Multitasking, when abused, lead to what I call time contamination. I've done it myself a lot. I have two children. They're not children anymore. They're teenagers. But when they were younger, I often would spend time on my phone when I was with them and not fully giving them my time and attention. I regret that now because I attribute that to time contamination. So think about your life over the next couple of days. Are there activities that you do simultaneously, multitasking, that maybe you shouldn't? Are you contaminating time in your personal or professional life? The last skill is the skill of focus. Focus is the ability to stay focused on one task at a time. I put this up on the slide today. It's new. I usually don't, but I'm starting to refer to it as we need to be ruthless with our time. That means that we need to strengthen our no muscle. We need to say no to interruptions and distractions and get laser focus on those tasks that we need to accomplish. So use the colors to prioritize those interruptions and distractions with the color red, green, and yellow. And the last thing that I want to say is, when it comes to focus, think about the activities that you choose. I want to introduce you to what I call the circles of influence. The one on the left represents what we value, the things that we care about that are important to us. And the circle on the right represents our performance, how we perform. Oftentimes, we may think of things, maybe family may be in that circle on the left. For you right now, school, because that's a huge priority to get your degree. Maybe it's work. Maybe it's service. Maybe it's something personal to you. Think about how aligned you are with those two circles and begin to think about aligning what you care about most with your performance. And I brought it up at the very beginning. There is no panacea. There's no cure-all. The first thing you need to do is change your mindset. Start thinking about activity management as opposed to time management. Think about the activities that you choose and what value do those really carry when it comes to the things that you care about, and begin to align those circles whenever possible. So the first skill we talked about is the skill of choosing. Choosing and refusing the activities we do have a direct impact on our performance and our overall well-being. We made a suggestion that you should track your investment of time. Find out where you're spending the majority of your day. Do it for a day, do it for a week. I promise you it's going to be an eye-opening experience. Then you can make the necessary adjustments. Arranging your day is next. Choose to invest a little bit of time up front in the planning process. Learn to flexecute your day. Know that sometimes things come up. You're going to have to be flexible. You're going to have to turn on a dime, and you're going to do it without letting it throw you off and get overwhelmed. And the last skill, whenever possible, I want you to learn to focus, to be where you are. And if you choose to apply these 5 skills on any level, I promise you it's going to help you stress less, avoid overwhelm, and make the best use of your time each and every day. So that's what I have. And I'm going to stick around and answer any questions for 10 minutes if you want.
At this point in the webinar, we turned off the recording and started a lively, engaging discussion with Mark. One of the first comments in the chat box was someone asking for advice because they found themselves saying yes to things that they really truly wanted to have experience in. And Mark noted that this is often a dead end road to overwhelm, and really encouraged this attendee to be thoughtful about these different choices, color their choices, and prioritize them accordingly. Next, we talked about people sharing insights and discussing this idea of multitasking and how a lot of us are starting to realize that maybe it's not a good idea. And just this idea of time contamination in general. The challenge was to just experience not multitasking for a couple of days and see how it influences your productivity. Next, we got into a discussion of how to track your time and just this idea that, in general, or the experience that we have of just being terrible at estimating how long it will actually take to get a task done. And Mark shared that he has a free download on his website, attackyourday.com, that can help you with this. We also talked about using this technique of coloring your choices and getting your tribe involved, whether that's people you work with or at home, sharing this idea of pausing to color your choices and using the same language with each other, just kind of getting everyone on the same page. Finally, Mark shared his contact info. If you need to get a hold of him, if you have any other questions, you can contact him at mark@attackyourday.com. I hope you mark your calendars for March 16th and join us when the Dean of the School of Education, Dr. Eva Ballard, gives a presentation on feedback, the currency of success. And if you don't already follow us on your favorite social media sites, please consider doing so. In particular, you will want to subscribe to the YouTube channels so that you can be notified when a new webinar is uploaded. Thanks so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next month.